Hello, everybody. I'm Ed Robinson, and welcome to this special edition of the League Wraparound. This is the program that gets you caught up on anything and everything happening around in the National Football League. On this edition of the program, we'll recap the 2024 NFL Draft, also talk about the atmosphere in Detroit, and also some other things that have caught my attention as well as this gentleman's attention, and we want to welcome him to the program. He is the host of the Into the Lab podcast and co-owner of Blue Collar Media Group. This guy knows his stuff. He's awesome, and certainly, man, he's never in a loss for words, not just when it comes to the NFL or sports, but things from an analytical perspective. Let's welcome him to the program, Ernest Silva, a.k.a. Doc E. Hey, Doc, welcome back to the program, my man.
Excited to be here, Ed. Excited to be here. Always a pleasure.
Likewise, sir. Thank you so much once again for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us on the program. So let's cut right to the chase. The 2024 NFL Draft. This was an exciting one, especially, I guess you could say this was the year of the quarterback. The number one overall pick belonging to the Chicago Bears. No surprise, they drafted Caleb Williams from USC. What's your thoughts on Caleb headed to the Windy City?
I love the choice of Caleb Williams. I think it was a no-brainer. I don't know if there was any other way you go besides Caleb Williams in the first pick overall. I think his ability to throw touchdowns and be a Showtime player is going to speak wonders. I know a lot of people have compared him to Kyler Murray, but I actually compare him a lot more to Justin Herbert. I think he's going to be a player that's going to match Justin Herbert's production, and given the right defense, could make a Super Bowl run.
You know, I never saw a comparison to him to Kyler Murray. Now, Justin Herbert, that's a reasonable comparison. I mean, I know Justin's got to be, 6'3", 6'4". I know Caleb's listed at maybe 6'1.5" or something like that, but I kind of see a resemblance to him and Justin Herbert. I want to stay just with Caleb now that he's the quarterback of the Chicago Bears. We know that Chicago, throughout the course of that organization, they've pride themselves on running game and defense. What do you think Caleb is going to do, what his impact is going to be, not just long-term, but even short-term?
I think it definitely changes. I think the Bears are preparing for that, especially with their number 9 overall pick with Zune, and then bringing in somebody like Keenan Allen to help pace that offense, and then DJ Moore already being there. Cole Kmet as well. This is going to be a high-flying offense, much faster than usual. They'll be moving the ball down the field. I think the run game might sacrifice a bit, but it's going to be for good reason because Caleb Williams is showing out this year.
Man, you're absolutely right. I know. Have you heard anything about Bears tickets, not just with the arrival of Caleb Williams, but also with Rome Odunze? What are the ticket prices like at Soldier Field for those Bears tickets this coming season?
They actually were selling before the draft pick. Their sales were up 80% before the draft, and they've actually sold out member tickets, season tickets, sorry. And, I mean, it's all pro-Chicago right now. And they feel they're just as much in the division as Detroit is for this season. They're all in, and the fan base is in it too. You may not know this, but I am a closet Bears fan. It's like my third team, so I do keep up with the Bears quite a bit.
Oh, wow. I can tell. And certainly, man, I tell you, the NFC North is going to be rocking. You mentioned Detroit and also Green Bay, Minnesota. They've got their guy. We're going to talk about him in just a little bit. Now you add Chicago to the mix as well. And let's stay with the Bears. So they've got, you mentioned the other names. You mentioned Keenan Allen. You also mentioned DJ Moore and also Cole Kmet. We got to talk about the number 9 pick. The Bears also were blessed to have the number 9 overall pick and Rome Odunze. So Caleb's impact is going to be enormous. Rome Odunze, his impact is going to be enormous as well. Give me your thoughts on Rome joining Caleb in the Windy City.
Yeah, I struggle with his last name half the time. I got to practice that. But Rome is fantastic. Production-wise, nobody was better in college football, and stat-wise. But he is going to be a top 3 talent at the wide receiver position. I love what he brings to the table. He's up there for me with somebody like Xavier Worthy, who is going to fit right into the Bears system, just like Worthy will fit right into the Chiefs system. I think it was the right pick. Him and Caleb already had chemistry off the field, and now they have chemistry on the field when they practice together. there was a lot of rumors coming out that they wanted to play together. So the fact that they made Caleb happy already, and they're making Rome happy already, just shows how committed they are to their young guns. Chicago doing the right thing here and not making the same mistake they made by not drafting Patrick Mahomes. So I'm all in. I'm all in with what the Bears are doing and keeping it young.
Yeah, a lot of us, not just broadcasters, but a lot of us football fans, Doc, we're all dialed into the Chicago Bears for this 2024 season. Let's stay with the Bears before we move on. This was a make-or-break draft for the front office, specifically for General Manager Ryan Poles. We know about, you mentioned his name, Patrick Mahomes. The Bears, they passed up on Patrick Mahomes. They passed up on Deshaun Watson. They passed up on Lamar Jackson, but they got it right this time with selecting Caleb Williams, and also, too, they got the ninth pick with Rome Odunze. How important was this draft just in terms of not only the job security of Ryan Poles, but also head coach Matt Eberflus?
I don't think it was so much as their jobs on the line, but I think you can't perform the way Carolina did. And they not only addressed this offseason the offensive line, the defensive line, locking up their star corner, but making sure that they're winning in the trenches, they can protect their quarterback, and that they also have key pieces to make a run. And the NFC North is going to have a very favorable schedule this year. So your counterparts in the NFC North are going to have good records. So it's a matter of staying relevant in your own division for the majority of the year and then making the playoffs to show, hey, the Bears are for real and we're back. And I think for the front office, if you do that, if you get close to the playoffs or you make the playoffs with your rookie quarterback, your rookie wideout with all your stars, you're primed to have a very successful tenure and a good 3 years before you have to get into contract reasons and have to start cutting ties with people. So I think the Bears are in the right place right now.
Yeah, absolutely, and they got it right this time. So kudos to the Bears with the number 1 overall pick, Caleb Williams, and also wide receiver Rome Odunze. All right, let's move over now to the 2nd overall pick, and I loved this one. The Washington Commanders, they drafted Jaden Daniels out of LSU, the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. Listen, Jaden had a season unlike any other. Statistically, his Heisman year was better than Joe Burrow's Heisman year. You know, we're talking about the LSU quarterbacks, but Jaden Daniels bringing so much to a franchise that needed quarterback play, similar to Chicago. Washington's quarterback last year was Sam Howell. It was decent, never really hit off on anything. And then also they experimented with other quarterbacks. The Carson Wentz situation didn't work out. So, but they got their guy. Washington's got Jaden Daniels. Give me your thoughts on Jaden headed to the DMV.
I was worried they wouldn't make the right pick. I thought maybe they would go Drake May and we'd be talking about how bad that pick was. But no, they end up going with Jaden Daniels, which I think is the right pick. I think he was the 2nd best quarterback in this draft, and I'm very glad that they picked him. Dan Quinn, I wish him all the best. Right, no longer in Dallas, now in Washington, picking his guy, and I hope he's successful, not too successful for the Dallas Cowboys' sake, but he is the right choice at number 2. Very deserving. His productivity numbers were rival there of Caleb Williams. He was brought into LSU to perform and carry that collegiate program. He had talent around him. Just an overall phenomenal player, so can't go wrong.
Absolutely. Now, I'm with you on this one, Doc. If the Commanders had drafted Drake May, I would have been so upset on this one because, I mean, I know people say, well, Drake May's got the size, yeah, but Jaden, to me, is the better athlete, in my opinion, and he fits the Commanders' offense very well. I want to stay just with Jaden for a moment. Yeah, absolutely. And let's stay with Washington's offense for a moment. Jaden has got some talent on the offensive side. I really love the offseason sign that they signed running back Austin Eckler. We know about his great years with the Chargers. Brian Robinson Jr. is a young dual-threat running back. Wide receivers, Jamison Crowder is back with the team. You've got Jahan Dotson and one of my favorite receivers, Scary Terry McLaurin. Then you've got Zach Ertz position. Man, Washington's offense is looking really good, and it's right for Mr. Daniels. Just give me your thoughts on how those weapons will help Jaden out in his rookie year.
Now, Jaden Daniels will have all the weapons galore. Washington's offense is going to skyrocket at least 10 places in the NFL. You're going to see teams like Dallas and others struggle and fall closer down to the middle of the pack. They may jump some of those teams. their defense will perform because they have somebody like Dan Quinn at the helm. So Washington is going to have a scary team in a few years. I think they're still a couple seasons away. How committed Scary Terry is to Washington and what Zach Ertz has left in the tank yet to be determined. Can that running back room get it right for a whole season? And can the offensive line keep Daniels from seeing the ground too much? There's a lot of questions still for me. And so I think Washington will struggle in games. I think they might win a couple they're not supposed to. But the defense, I think, will be the big conversation. And then probably how much Daniels progresses, whether it's bad or good.
Absolutely. You mentioned the key word right there, defense. And again, their defense is going to be locked and loaded this year with Cleveland Ferrell, Dante Fowler. Of course, we know about Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne. Enough said, right? And then you've got Bobby Wagner, who signed during the offseason, and also Frankie Louvu at the linebacker position. And defensively, Washington is loaded. I want to know, with Dan Quinn coming into the helm in his first year as head coach of Washington, how do you think he's going to help out with Jaden in his development? I know Dan is a defensive guy, and he's going to be focused solely on the defense, but how do you think Dan will help Jaden out in terms of his development at quarterback?
I don't think Dan Quinn's a quarterback whisperer, but that's why you bring in a supportive staff to come in and work with the quarterback room like what he has. It's going to be interesting to see how Dan Quinn influences the defense like he did in Dallas and like he did in Atlanta, because both of those defenses rose up to be number one defenses in the NFL. There was a time where Washington was not so distant past where they were very good, and they've gotten rid of those foundational players. So how Dan Quinn instills his new structure, I think, is going to be pivotal for the defense, because Dan Quinn brings this element of structure to the defense, and that is the big piece. And having Kingsbury on staff doesn't hurt when it comes to the development of Daniels. I think that's a bigger piece and a connection than Quinn.
Yeah, you said the key name right there, Cliff Kingsbury. We know about his time in Arizona, what he did with Kyler Murray, and I know it's going to be huge at just developing the young quarterback in Jaden Daniels. So the Washington Commanders, the number 2 overall pick, belonged to the Commanders. The number 2 overall pick was Jaden Daniels out of LSU. All right, so number 3, Doc, we mentioned his name earlier, Drake May, out of North Carolina, quarterback drafted by the New England Patriots. That was the 3rd overall pick. So, Doc, the last year and a half, we sat through, well, actually the last several years, we saw Tom Brady and the Swan Song and parting ways in Foxborough. Then the Mac Jones era didn't work out. Bailey Zappi, that didn't work out. Jones off to Jacksonville in the trade. So Drake May comes in. Belichick is out. In comes Gerard Mayo as the new head coach. Your thoughts on Drake May headed to New England?
I think Drake May is a typical Patriots move, not to sound belittling of what Drake May can do. He obviously has the experience for his time at North Carolina, and comes in with a less than a stellar ratio when it comes to his overall production, but he has the quarterback size. I think size always determines somebody drives up the draft, and so we see Drake May benefiting from that. I don't know if he's ready for the spotlight in New England. It's more in what some of the other picks in New England might do, hinting the Travis pick later on in the draft. But we'll see if May is that guy, and hopefully they don't have a Trubisky situation happening in New England this year.
I want to stay just with May for a moment. The last team we talked about, Washington, Dan Quinn, the head coach, defensive-minded, but there's some pieces that can help Jaden thrive. Cliff Kingsbury, offensive coordinator. New England, this is a different situation. Gerard Mayo, defensive guy, linebacker, a disciple of Bill Belichick, Super Bowl pedigree. But do you think, you mentioned Trubisky, but do you think there's enough for Drake to thrive in New England, or is it too early?
It's too early. He may be fantastic. He may end up having solid numbers this year where he's throwing 20 touchdowns and 5 picks. But the team is probably going to go 3-14, right? And it's not going to be a reflection of him, just like we didn't really hold the reflection in Carolina. I think it's going to be a matter of building talent around him. They may be a couple of drafts away from really contending or being a threat to the playoffs, and the Patriots are going to live with that, especially with the turnover from Belichick to Mayo. I think everybody's on board with there's not a lot of expectation, which may open up and throw the ball more because that expectation is so low. So that's why I think his production numbers may be high, but it won't be resulting in wins.
All right, we'll see what happens in Foxborough in the post-Belichick era. So Drake May, the third overall pick, headed to the New England Patriots. The fourth overall pick belonged to the Arizona Cardinals. Wide receiver out of Ohio State, Marvin Harrison Jr. Hey, Doc, you know, he's a son of Hall of Fame royalty, right? And we know about his career at Ohio State. Man, what a great situation for Marvin Harrison Jr. Kyler Murray's your quarterback, right? I mean, you can't go wrong with that. And certainly the sky's the limit for Marvin Harrison Jr. Your thoughts on Harrison headed to Arizona?
Another situation where they'll be throwing a lot. So that's going to be a very interesting dynamic. Marvin Harrison Jr. may be front runner for being Rookie of the Year with the amount of catches he may have this year. Arizona will be playing from behind quite a bit. It's a very tough NFC West. I do think he's the right pick for where they're at. He was the best player overall, I think, rating-wise, I had on my board. You just had quarterback needs at the top. And he will be stellar there in Arizona. They tend to take care of their Hall of Fame wide receivers. Not saying he's already a Hall of Famer, but he has the body type. He has the talent. He has the NFL pedigree. Barring any sort of injuries that I wish on nobody, I hope he has his Hall of Fame career, and I hope it's all there in Arizona.
Absolutely, and certainly Marvin Harrison, great spot for him. And Jonathan Gannon entering his second year as the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray is going to be healthy in 2024, so definitely should be sky's the limit for Marvin Harrison Jr. All right, the fifth overall pick belonged to the Los Angeles Chargers, offensive lineman, offensive tackle out of Notre Dame, Joe Alt. So this is a new era now. Head coach Jim Harbaugh is in. Justin Herbert expected to do big things this year. However, no Keenan Allen, no Austin Eckler, but their first pick was an offensive tackle. Your thoughts on Joe headed to the Chargers?
Joe Alt is going to be one of those offensive linemen we talked for decades and see in the Pro Bowl for decades. He's almost like a truck. And you don't want to go up against him if you're a defensive lineman or a defensive player. And so I compare him a lot to Zach Martin of the Dallas Cowboys. Same pedigree, same upbringing, same system. I think he's going to be phenomenal. And that's what you need to protect Herbert and give him time and to find players that are going to have a lot of coming out parties in Los Angeles, considering the roster. So I look forward to seeing that. And I wouldn't be surprised if Los Angeles ends up being a landing place for Odell Beckham Jr.
I can see that happening, too. I mean, hey, Odell is, as we're talking, is still a free agent. So then, you know, you never know what can happen in the NFL. So Joe Alt headed to the Los Angeles Chargers. And the sixth pick belonged to the New York Giants. They selected Malik Neighbors, wide receiver out of LSU. Again, a LSU player we talked about earlier, Jaden Daniels, Heisman Trophy winner. Well, Malik Neighbors was one of the gentlemen responsible for helping Jaden get those monster numbers. Malik, sensational in his time at LSU. The Giants selected him. I mean, this is interesting right here. Your thoughts on Malik headed to the Big Apple?
I did not expect this pick. It was not something I projected. I did not think they would go wide receiver. Matter of fact, I thought Neighbors would end up in Los Angeles and Joe Alt would be in New York because it makes much more sense piece-wise. So I was scratching my head like everybody else, but you go with the best player on the board. Neighbors would argue he's the best receiver in this draft, that he's the guy everybody should have been targeting, and you don't really doubt him. In the spotlight, his clutch percentage was 87%. Every time LSU needed a clutch catch and they went to the air, 87% of the time it was to Malik Neighbors. And you want that type of player on your offense, and you want that type of player there in New York. If you have to compare him to somebody as of late, if you're listening to this show and you don't remember too many Giant players, to me, he's like a Plaxico Burress. I think that's how he fits the system the best. His upside passable, in my opinion, but I think he's going to have a stellar NFL career. And again, you ride that as much as you can for an up-and-coming franchise that's been struggling since last season and struggling to find their rhythm.
Let's stay with the G-men for a moment. They struggled to find their rhythm at quarterback last year. They went through 3 quarterbacks. Daniel Jones got hurt. Tyrod Taylor was solid, but he got hurt as well. Then we saw the rise of a Jersey native by the name of Mr. Tommy DeVito. Question is, who will throw Malik Neighbors the ball in 2024 for the Giants?
I think DeVito's the choice for it, but there's going to be a lot of Daniel Jones truthers out there that believe when he's healthy, he's one of the better quarterbacks. You have the right coach for that system. I think there's a quarterback whisperer in New York as well. It's what makes the NFC so dangerous is that any one of those teams can be very, very good if the right things fall into place. And the Giants have a lot to prove on the defensive end. They have some holes gaping in the trenches. But one big thing is going to be if Daniel Jones can prove he's that franchise quarterback again after another year where he goes down, another quarterback comes in and shines. We'll have to see. The era of Daniel Jones in New York is far from over.
All right, so that took care of the New York Giants selecting the 6th overall pick, the Malik Neighbors wide receiver out of LSU. All right, so Doc, the 7th overall was the Tennessee Titans. They selected J.C. Latham, offensive tackle from Alabama. This was an interesting pick right here. I thought maybe Tennessee would go on the offensive side, but the Titans got J.C. Latham. Your thoughts on J.C. headed to Music City, USA?
J.C. Latham is the right choice just from a best player available standpoint. I am a very much pro go get a Bama players where you can get them, especially if they're listed as the best player available. Tennessee did the right choice, in my opinion. There was a different defensive lineman I probably would have gone with personally in this pick, but if that's who you're going to go with, you can't go wrong with him. If you're Tennessee, the question to me probably would have been, is it too early, right? You do have a hole there at defensive line. You do have to make up that talent some way, somehow, and you go with J.C. Latham. I don't know. I personally probably would have gone a different direction. With an O-line choice, I probably would have gone with, believe it or not, a wide receiver there too, and kind of fill up a talent pool there in Tennessee since he lost Derrick Henry. Obviously, way too early for any sort of running back prospect in this draft. But they take Latham, and he's going to be a phenomenal addition to that line and solidify, hopefully, whoever's taking snaps behind there starting the season, Will Levis, I would guess.
All right, so that takes care of the pick that the Tennessee Titans had at number 7, J.C. Latham, offensive tackle for Alabama. The 8th overall pick belonged to the Atlanta Falcons, and I like this pick, but I'm confused about this pick. The Falcons drafted Michael Penix Jr., quarterback out of the University of Washington. Kirk Cousins, several weeks before the draft, got a massive contract with the Falcons of 4 years, $180 million fully guaranteed. Now, several weeks later, the draft comes, and the Falcons, they draft Penix, and it's very strange going on in the ATL. Give me your thoughts on Penix going to Atlanta.
I did a show before this draft, and the one thing I said was that Michael Penix, if he is back to full strength and he is looking great through the combine, he reminds me of Michael Vick. And I said that on a show, and somebody was like, okay, you're tripping. I want Atlanta to pull the trigger and draft. And I thought that is the best way to validate my thinking for this, is that the franchise that Michael Vick really came out and showed how great he was, and just the cheat code on any Madden game you play. It's the same franchise who picked Michael Penix after they signed their quarterback in Kirk Cousins to get into the next level. I'm all about this pick. Matter of fact, I couldn't have dreamt it any better for Bijan Robinson. You have a solid 1-2 threat behind the line and a lot of talent to throw to. This is going to be a fun team to watch. This is going to be one of the fastest teams in the NFL, and I'm all about it. So kudos to Atlanta for ruining everybody's draft board And shout out to Michael Penix Jr. for getting selected by a team that truly believes in him.
Yeah, this has the potential to be something very special, Doc. I want to stay just with the Penix pick. I wanted to ask you, Kirk Cousins is going to be the starter, so he's under contract. He's got this 4-year deal with all of this fully guaranteed money. How long do you think Penix will sit behind Cousins? Could it be a year? Could it be 2 years, maybe 3? How long do you think Penix will sit behind Cousins before he takes over the reins as quarterback?
I think it's going to be some time. It might be a year or two, but he may end up starting the year because Kirk Cousins may be more hurt than we know. I know he had to pass a physical aside from his injury. I know he said he's feeling good, but maybe he's not 100% if he's going through workouts. And they may need Penix to take starter minutes in preseason, maybe even start a couple games before Kirk Cousins rolls out there, and depending how the schedule lays out. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of Penix next year to get that vibe going of what your number one pick is or your first round pick is in Atlanta, and then see a lot more of him in the ensuing years after Kirk is back to 100%.
One thing is for sure, man, whenever the Penix era begins in Atlanta, it is going to be something. It is going to be something to see. Like you said, it's going to be similar to Michael Vick whenever that day happens. So the Atlanta Falcons draft Michael Penix Jr., 8th overall, out of the University of Washington. So we talked the 9th overall pick, the Chicago Bears getting Rome Odunze. So let's move over to the 10th overall pick, the Minnesota Vikings. They drafted their quarterback for the future out of the University of Michigan, J.J. McCarthy. So Kirk Cousins' era is over with. He's in Atlanta. J.J. McCarthy is in for the Vikings. Give me your thoughts on J.J. headed to Minnesota.
Yeah, I think that the Minnesota Vikings played to their strengths, didn't, teeter to where they wanted to go and get pressured by anybody for their pick. When I look at the Minnesota Vikings, they needed one thing, and gapingly they needed a quarterback that was going to be somebody of a seat filler, hype around their area. Who better than J.J. McCarthy? And J.J. McCarthy was the draft star because it's there in Detroit. And I think that speaks volumes. He was phenomenal at Michigan. Harbaugh used him correctly, led his team to a national championship, and everybody wanted to see him go early. Nobody thought they'd see him at 10. And Minnesota gets their franchise quarterback at 10, who they believe is just as good as all the rest because he's a proven winner and has the experience. I do love Minnesota's taking the chance on this and trying to keep Justin Jefferson happy by bringing more stars. We'll have to see if that's enough. There's going to be a lot of talk on where stars want to go if Minnesota starts off poorly this year, especially if they start off 0-4 or 0-5 again, and Justin Jefferson will try to find a new home, and that's going to be the big story. But I'm hoping J.J. McCarthy does work out for Minnesota. Could you imagine if that does work out, that NFC North is going to be absolutely barbaric. Those games are going to be truly star-studded and back and forth, and that's exciting.
Indeed, it is going to be exciting. You said his name best, Doc. Justin Jefferson. This is the final year of his rookie contract, and with them getting a quarterback and getting J.J. McCarthy, this is a make-or-break year because if Jefferson gets it done, specifically if McCarthy can find him, then McCarthy and Jefferson, that could be a good duo for seasons to come. But you're absolutely right. If Minnesota can get going, man, that division is going to be off the chain. So the 10th overall pick, the Minnesota Vikings, they drafted quarterback J.J. McCarthy. Good pick for the New York Jets. They had the 11th overall pick. They drafted Olu Fashanu, offensive tackle out of Penn State. There's a quarterback by the name of Aaron Rodgers, and they're trying to get the most out of him before he decides to hang it up. So good pick. I like this one. Give me your thoughts on the Jets getting a Fashanu.
Have to do everything to solidify Aaron Rodgers and keep him healthy. He's going to come back trying to fight off all the critics for only playing like 3 plays. And it's the right pick for the area. You go offensive lineman, you protect Aaron Rodgers, and hope that the future stays bright with him and you have a chance to make a run this year with some teams in the AFC falling from grace.
All right, rightfully so. So remember, it's all about, you said, preserving Rodgers as long as you have him. And the Jets got their offensive tackle, 11th overall, Olu Fashanu, out of Penn State. So the 12th overall pick belonged to the Denver Broncos, and they got their quarterback out of the University of Oregon, Bo Nix. Bo Nix, Doc, is very solid, about 6'3", 6'4", a guy that has a strong arm, but, man, he is as tough as they come. And we saw the quarterback carousel in Denver, 2 years of Russell Wilson, Sean Payton. They never gelled. Jarrett Stidham started the final 2 games of the season. He's not the answer, and they're starting from scratch. So financially, Denver not able to really sign big free agents, so they're starting from scratch. They're going through the draft. They went cheap, but they got a good one in Bo Nix. Your thoughts on Bo headed to Denver?
Say it with me. We want Bo. We want Bo. May have been the 6th quarterback off the board, but 6 quarterbacks and 12 picks means it was year of the arm, and Bo Nix is no slouch. He probably got the biggest cannon out of everybody that we've mentioned. I think Daniels might have something to say about that, but I'll say he has the biggest cannon out of everybody, out of all 6 quarterbacks. And I think that Bo Nix is going to have Zach Wilson there to show him what not to do, and he's going to have John Elway there to tell him how to do it. And there just might be some success for him there in Denver. They're pieces away also. Don't expect them to be making a run to the Super Bowl because they got Bo Nix. But expect them to see Javonte Williams come back healthy, see what they have left in the wide receiver room now that Jerry Jeudy is gone and that bit of conflict is gone. And Cortland Sutton is there to kind of and Patrick Surtain are there to kind of keep the captain statuses, keep the Broncos relevant. Bo Nix, man, being better than people think. And staying on the West Coast, that's what he wants, or west side of the United States, that's what he wants, stays in his time zone. I'm excited. I think every quarterback went to the right fit, and that's what's even more exciting about this draft class.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Bo's got a good situation in Denver. It's almost like a nothing to lose type of situation. I mean, Denver is going to lose financially for the next several years with the whole Russell Wilson deal. But Sean Payton, hopefully this can work out, be a success for Bo Nix, as Bo is drafted 12th overall by the Denver Broncos. The 13th overall pick belonged to the Las Vegas Raiders. They drafted tight end out of Georgia, Brock Bowers. Give me your thoughts on Brock headed to Vegas.
That's going to be somebody that's going to be very successful in the NFL. I think Brock Bowers, along with Michael Mayer, is going to make that offense kind of click. Devontae Adams is what keeps the stardom there. But as far as consistency is key. Double down on your tight ends. Vegas had the 3rd most usage of the tight end last year. Had the best distance when it comes to Devontae Adams, but the 3rd best usage of tight ends, considering the breakouts with Michael Mayer. I think it's going to be phenomenal. Double down. Atlanta did it. Vegas then does it. I'm excited to see what happens in Vegas.
All right, so, it's going to be interesting. The Raiders are going to go through the air because they just signed Gardner Minshew. So Gardner's always down for a good 300, 400-yard passing game. I know Brock Bowers, healthy this year, he's definitely going to benefit from that. So the Raiders, 13th overall, they drafted Brock Bowers out of Georgia. The New Orleans Saints were next. They had the 14th overall pick, and they drafted offensive tackle out of Oregon State, Talis Fuaga. And they needed this one. I think this is a great pick for the Saints. Derek Carr had a lot of injuries last year. Jameis Winston had his share of injuries as well, and they needed an offensive lineman. We don't know what the future of Ryan Ramczyk is going to be. Cesar Ruiz had his injuries. Andres Pete's been hurt, so Fuaga makes sense for the Saints. Give me your thoughts on Talis heading to the Crescent City.
I think at this point, when you're looking at teams and what they're picking, it's basically all what's our need, right? And going with the offensive tackle out of Oregon State, I think it's just all about the run at that point. You're trying to make sure Kamara and anybody else who's running behind that line, maybe it's Taysom Hill, has somebody out there that can really drive defenders back on their butts, and that would be all Fuaga. If you watch any Oregon State football, you know that the running program went all behind him. I actually think he's one of the best run blockers in this class, probably in the last 3 classes. So I'm excited to see what he can bring to the table, and he brings a culture and fit that's just going to be phenomenal for New Orleans. So excited for that pick too.
Absolutely. So the New Orleans Saints at the 14th overall pick, they drafted Talis Fuaga, offensive tackle out of Oregon State. The Indianapolis Colts were next on the clock. They had the 15th overall pick. They drafted Laiatu Latu, defensive end from UCLA. Now, we know about the Indianapolis Colts, right? So defensively, defensively, they were solid last year. They had Shaq Leonard and things of that nature. Also, DeForest Buckner, Raekwon Davis, also Samson Ebukam. Those guys are back on the defensive side. And when you add Latu, who was just a monster at UCLA, he just couldn't be touched. Give me your thoughts on Latu headed to Indy.
Very high on Latu. I went on a mock draft with MTMV Sports 2 days before the draft, and I said whoever gets Latu is lucky. I actually had him going in that mock draft to the Colts. So that was a perfect fit pick for me. I know I keep saying that today, but I think the top teams really got it right. They start teams, especially maybe like the Falcons and Raiders, they kind of chose some outlandish picks. But I like this pick a lot. I think he fits. A lot of people would have argued Dallas Turner here makes more sense. But Latu fits the scheme of a 4-3 defense there in Indy, and I like it. So I'm going to say he's the next big up-and-coming thing, and Indy takes advantage of that and shows everybody why he's so good.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one, Doc. I think Laiatu is going to thrive in Indy. So the 15th overall pick, the Indianapolis Colts, they drafted Laiatu Latu, defensive end from UCLA. All right, several picks I'd like to discuss. So the 16th overall pick, the Seattle Seahawks, they drafted Byron Murphy, good pick for the Hawks. The Vikings had the 17th overall pick. They drafted Dallas Turner out of Alabama, defensive end. That was major, adding on to their defensive pedigree. And the Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow, they're still trying to protect him. He's their insurance. He's their high investment. They drafted Amarius Mims, offensive tackle out of Georgia. Any thoughts you have on those gentlemen?
I definitely love the Murphy pick for Seattle. I think he's a culture setter. Obviously, as a Longhorns show and fan, I am very pro Byron Murphy going to the Seahawks. Can't go wrong with Bama players. I've already said before, Dallas Turner will be special, and so I expect great things from him. I think Amarius Mims is probably the best pick out of all of these. Fills a need for Cincinnati, lets them know that, hey, we're serious about keeping Joe Burrow healthy. We know we've had turnover. We know people are leaving, but we're still able to attract top talent. So we'll see what Cincinnati does with that pick and see if they can recover.
All right, so that's just some of the picks that we've that's just some of the picks that we discussed, some big important ones that we had in this NFL draft. It was certainly exciting. All right, real quick, Doc, Detroit, they set an attendance record. Over 700,000 people attended the NFL draft this year in Detroit. Give me your thoughts on the city of Detroit hosting the 2024 NFL draft.
I heard the story that Detroit and the mayor and a bunch of different individuals said that they would break that record and blow it away from what was set in Tennessee. I completely was astonished by the amount of people there for an NFL draft in Detroit. I mean, obviously Eminem's a big draw. Having all the Detroit Hall of Famers and star players come out. Barry Sanders being there was phenomenal. And then here you have the Detroit fan base just showing up and showing out. If you have some still shots or you haven't seen like the crowd that was there and you're listening to this show, go check it out. It is just amazing. But totally love the idea of moving the draft to different places. This has been such a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And Detroit definitely did their thing. And you mentioned Barry Sanders being there, Eminem. That helps as well, a Detroit native. And certainly Detroit did their thing this year. And Green Bay will host the 2025 NFL draft. All right, quickly, Doc, anything that caught your eye during the draft this year? Players or just atmosphere? Anything that caught your eye during this year's draft?
I think the Cowboys had a better draft than most people give to them. I did like the choices that they selected. A lot of underrated players, but they addressed needs. They had a lot of turnover where they lost players to other teams, but they were the team that lost 16 players this offseason, and that's a lot of turnover for a team. You only have 53 men on the roster. So you see a team that goes through, almost 25% of their team is gone, and they address needs. They still have guys on the team like Brandon Cooks, Stephon Gilmore still in contract negotiations. They brought back Zeke. I think the Cowboys made some addressing moves that they needed to do to be successful this year. So I think they had an underrated draft. I think people aren't giving it the justice that it deserves. The team I thought is not getting enough attention is the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers had choices like the tight end Sanders and running back Jonathan Brooks, who come both from the Longhorns, but also are tremendous, tremendous athletes to add to their talent pool already. And they did things enough to shore up their Bryce Young choice from last year. They're going to have a +3 win total at least. And that's underrated in an NFC South that's wide open. So I think those two teams highlight for me that are a little low on people's radar. But the Chiefs pick was one of my favorite picks. It's absolutely the right move. One of my favorite first-round picks. I'm so excited to see that pairing, and super excited to see Adonai Mitchell in Indianapolis as well. So I think you see very pro-Longhorns, and Longhorns have the most drafted players in any college this year. So very excited.
Those could be draft stealers right there. Xavier Worthy to the Chiefs and Adonai Mitchell going to the Colts. All right, quickly, Doc, before we get you on out of here. All right, yay or nay, the Chiefs repeating as champs and the possibility of a three-peat. Yay or nay, and why?
It's not even a quick reaction for me. I've been thinking this for months now before the draft even happened. The Chiefs are going to be a dynasty, and they're going to three-peat. The Chiefs have the team. They've gotten better this offseason. They've solidified their stars. They brought in key talent. They extended Kelsey. They got Worthy. They're all in. And Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelsey and this Chiefs team, they're going to be really good next year. And we didn't say that last year. We said they were going to be good. They had some holes. They addressed those holes. They progressed some players. I'm very excited about the Chiefs. So I'm all in. It's a yay for me.
Okay, fair enough. And Jerry Jones not being aggressive during this offseason, your thoughts?
Yeah, kind of bumming. I was expecting Cowboys to restructure Dak and either extend and restructure or just restructure, and they failed to do either of those things. The Cowboys had no money. If Dak didn't restructure and figure it out with the Cowboys and work together, Dallas couldn't sign anybody. That's the reason they couldn't be as aggressive as they wanted to be. Now, for the money and opportunities that they had, they restructured some players. They were allowed to grab and bring back a couple of players. But with no money, you need players who are very pro-Dallas to come back on smaller deals. And that includes the Zeke contract at 1 year, $3 million. There's going to be a lot of that until that restructure happens, or if it doesn't, a lot of players taking just that many deals, like Stephon Gilmore, just to play there and be there on a possible championship-winning team.
All right, and you mentioned his name, Dak Prescott's contract situation. What does his future hold in Dallas?
That's absolutely up in the air. This is a make-or-break year for McCarthy and Prescott. I do feel like if they don't get to the NFC Championship or the Super Bowl, you're looking at a bust for Dak in Dallas, and that's hard to swallow because for a lot of Dallas Cowboy fans, this was going to be the next guy after Romo, and it's going to be interesting. Contract year, usually players outperform on their contract year. We just saw Dak Prescott be the third best quarterback in the league statistically in the regular season. That's hard to top that. Are you going to tell me Dak's going to be the number one quarterback in the NFL this year? That's the only way I see him getting re-signed. Or they make the NFC Championship or Super Bowl. And I don't think their team is nearly as talented as last year with experience than they were this year. So it's going to be interesting.
All right, the division rival Philadelphia Eagles making moves in the offseason. Saquon Barkley signs a deal. Also, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, massive extensions. And Jalen Hurts won't be going anywhere anytime soon. Your thoughts on the Eagles' moves in the offseason?
Yeah, I actually am not a big fan of what the Eagles have done. I'm not sold on Brown and the wide receiver core personally. They've been producing. I'm not really huge on Jalen Hurts right now either. He's had one good season. When he's hurt, he struggles. I guess anybody who gets hurt struggles, but when he's bad, he's bad. So you have to think about the floor being very low for the Philadelphia Eagles, where they could come in last in the division, or they could come in first in the division. It kind of depends on health. A.J. Brown, same thing. It's always about health. So for me, the Eagles are one of the riskier teams to put money on for the offseason.
Thank you so much, Doc. And you heard it from him. He's Ernest Doc E. Silva, host of the Into the Lab podcast, co-owner of the Blue Collar Media Group. Thanks again, Doc. Tell everybody where they can find you on social media, any websites. Let them know that as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ed. And it's wonderful to be on the show. I appreciate you having me. Yes, you can find me at Into the Lab Pod on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday nights. You can catch our show. The sports scientists dissect all the latest and greatest things, all basketball and football. And at Into the Lab Pod, usually 8:30 p.m. Central Time or 9 p.m. Central Time, just kind of depending on when the kiddos go down. Got a newborn that I'm making sure gets down, and excited to be here again, and I look forward to being on the show later in the fall.
Absolutely, Doc. Thank you so much once again. If ever you want to come back on, feel free to let us know.
Wonderful, Ed. Always a pleasure, man. Talk to you later.
All right, solid. And as always, that's going to do it for another exciting edition of the program. Until next time, everybody, I'm Ed Robinson saying so long, and you take care.